Hello, and welcome to the Whole Loaf, a holistic approach to building healthy lives and strong relationships. I am here with my wife, Suzanne, and with Deborah Murray, food stylist to the stars and author of 17 cookbooks. And tonight, we're going to start talking about tradition. You know, as we're entering this season of the year, you got Thanksgiving and Christmas and even Halloween, right?
Yeah.
So we're going to start talking about tradition. So we're going to start preparing some of our favorite traditional foods. And when you hear tradition, what do you think of?
I think about family getting together
Yeah.
and making memories.
Yeah,
Don't you?
Absolutely.
What are some of your favorite traditions out there? I mean, anybody? It's like, I can remember like Christmas Eve, getting together with my family on Christmas Eve. And then all of us going to the late worship service on Christmas Eve, the 11 p.m. service.
We always go to yours, the 6 o'clock,
You go
the
to-
family service.
go to 6 o'clock family
Where we
service,
be snookered after.
Yeah. Anyway, so we have all kinds of traditions out there. And I'm sure you've got some, whether you realize it or not, you have some traditions. One of my favorite traditions are on Christmas morning. You know, one of my favorite homemade foods are the Pillsbury Grands, right? You simply crack that baby open and you put them out there, you know, with the homemade icing on it and everything else. And you just bake them for what, 375 for 12 minutes. And you've got some delicious
Poppin'
fresh cinnamon muffins right there. So we're gonna make one of my favorite traditions. This is one of the things we did. So like every Christmas morning, we would wake up like super early.
Right.
Because I'm a pastor, I have to be at church, right?
Right.
And so I would wake my kids up. And from the time my kids were little, we've got video of them. We have to wake them up every year. We have video of them. You know, Santa Claus came, get up, get up. And we'd go out, we'd open presents at the crack of dawn.
Right.
All right, and then we'd always make these cinnamon rolls.
I love
all right,
it.
and then we'd all go to church on Christmas morning. So that was one of our traditions.
That they all look forward to.
That we all, and even last year, you know, my kids are grown, right? The one lived in Rochester, Minnesota, but yet we all came together for Christmas Eve.
I love
And
that.
we still did that. I still had my camera out and I was videotaping them going, it's Christmas, Santa Claus came.
Do you guys wear the matching pajamas? I needed them.
Yeah, we do.
I love it.
That's a
Yours
newer
too.
tradition.
That's
My
so
mom
cute.
lives up in the villages.
Oh, I love
And they always
it.
have
Yeah.
on the square, they have all the entertainment and stuff.
Uh-huh.
And the entire family, like 12 of us, we
Right.
all dress up as elves or
Elves.
something.
Oh,
And
I
we
love
go dancing.
it.
We go dancing out on a square. But that's
I'm not surprised
That's-
I've seen
yeah.
the leader hoses.
yeah, you've seen that.
Exactly.
So there's all kinds of different traditions out there, and one of your traditions has always been food, right?
It has. I mean, as a little girl, I remember we'd go to my grandmother's every Christmas Eve, and the smells that when you'd walk in the door, like, oh my gosh, the homemade bread, the roast beef, the hams, and then seeing all your family that you love so much. I can choke up just thinking about those times. Sitting at the little kids' table in the living room because the grown-ups had theirs,
Yeah.
or great conversation. But what I tried to repeat in my household was I wanted those smells. And now that life has changed for me, I wish I thought more about doing smells the easy way.
Yeah,
instead
then
of-
the hard way.
Oh, I would turn into the holiday hag.
Yeah.
I remember one year going, everyone, the potatoes are ready. And my husband goes, we're enjoying each other's company. I was like, oh,
Yes.
new.
I'd walk into my grandma's house, I could smell the mothballs. It makes
Oh.
me choke up too.
Bring
Every
you
year
tears.
I would choke up too. But anyway, a tradition is a ritual, right? It's a family ritual, a regular ritual that you do at the same time, you know, roughly the same time of year, the same way, over and over again. And rituals, traditions, play an extremely important part in any relationship, in your family or in a relationship. It just plays an extremely important part of a relationship. You know, so those traditions, they provide a source of identity.
Right.
You know, I mean, if you really think about it,
You're right.
it tells a story about a family. You know, it tells a story of your family. And it can be like a macro kind of story, you know, the big picture kind of thing. You know, like in my family, I can remember with my grandfather, we would make panchitas, okay, which was basically a crepe.
That's
You know, and my grandpa, he was a chef, and he would just build this stack. I mean, there had to be 100, 200 crepes because they're real thin.
Right.
And we would roll jelly, and you'd roll all kinds of different stuff in them. And
What a great
but
memory.
we would, yeah, it was just a great memory spending time with my grandpa. You know, making panchitas, or like my mom right now, she makes chicken paprikash, and that comes from my grandfather,
Right.
who was Hungarian and was a chef and taught us some of those recipes. And so a lot of times those traditions, the macro view can tell like a story about you. It can tell, you know, your family culture, you know, where you came from. It can tell family history, you know, and so it's extremely important. And then you have those micro ones too. You know those micro
What would that
traditions?
be?
Renting the same lake house every year.
Nice.
You know,
I
like
like
if-
that one.
Yeah, you know, I mean, you're talking about
Yeah, we
going
used
to
to
North
go to
Carolina.
North Carolina when I was
Yeah.
in Boone for
Yep.
sure.
Yep, and so like in my family, like right after Christmas, because you know, being a pastor, once again, it's extremely busy all the way through Advent and Christmas.
Oh, yeah.
We take off every year and we go up to North Carolina, where I have a tendency to break my daughter's arm every year. We go snow skiing, and so we'll go to North Carolina and go snow skiing all the time. And so
Fun.
it's just a
So
way to,
pretty.
yeah, it just becomes a tradition, right? And so talking about traditions,
Okay.
what are you making for us? I'm
right.
going to stick my tradition in the oven here.
So I'm excited that you shared the tradition of the cinnamon buns because I think that's just so awesome. I would have been the one that had the yeast going all night, you know,
Yeah.
making a mess in the kitchen, making all that stress. I like the fact that that's a great smell, really delicious, but very easy. This is a tradition that seems daunting. You said that this was something you always wanted to learn to make.
I have always wanted to learn how to make, I mean, I don't even know what kind of meat to buy
Well,
when it comes to prime rib.
Prime rib is the ribeye, which is just off, you know, you have the 7 bones on the cattle and it's that piece right
Okay.
there that's very, 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 very tender.
Yeah.
And if you take a look at it, there's an enormous amount of fat on the top. And inside there are these lots of little white lines. The more white lines, the more expensive it is, the more marbling. Why prime rib is such a great thing to serve for the holidays. When we had them in the restaurants, Paul, we would cook up all the prime ribs for like 9, 10 o'clock in the morning. And then we would reheat them by just slowly dipping them in the au jus.
Okay.
The au jus is the juice that they make from cooking the bones. So what's beautiful about it is you can make this gorgeous roast at 9 o'clock in the morning. Your guests don't come until noon, 1 o'clock. And if your mom wants well done and yet you want medium rare, this roast will accommodate that because I can take, of course, the closest to the end is going to be more cooked, and you can reheat in the au jus, and it has a very savory, tender flavor, and it's something that people usually only order when they go out
Yeah,
to eat.
that's the
So-
only time I ever get it. That's why I've always like, I'm fascinated with making this.
All right, so the one thing I do, and I didn't do this here today, is normally I buy bone in. The Sam's did not have the one with the bone in right now, so I ended up just getting the whole ribeye. But I like the bone in because then I cut the bones off and I roast the bones separately, and then I cook them with a little bit of beef stock to make the au jus with
Okay.
some vermouth and red wine. But when you cut the bone off, or the way I've done it, I've cut off the, and I'm gonna tie it tight.
So why are you tying it tight?
Because what I want it to do is to cook more even.
Okay.
So if we have a little flap over here on the side, when you're
okay.
paying $9, $10,
Okay.
$12, $13, $14 a pound, you don't want one piece pot roast and the rest of it to be medium
Yeah,
rare.
okay.
The most important thing about the prime rib is you want to let it sit at room temperature for, I even let it do for an hour. And the reason for that is it'll help it cook more evenly. You start your oven at 500 degrees. You want to make sure that the oven is really that hot.
Okay.
And then you're going to take your roast at room temperature. You feel it. When I say room temperature, it's not warm to the touch,
Yeah.
but it's also not ice cold. So the fats become to the room temperature. It will be a less, what do you call it? It's not going to seize when it goes into the oven. And I'm going to roll it in salt, pepper, and I like to use Montreal steak
Oh,
seasoning.
yep.
My favorite.
It
It
is
is one of those.
perfect. It's got garlic in it. It's got all kinds
She
of
puts
great flavors.
Montreal steak seasoning on
See,
everything.
we are
It's like,
soul sisters.
enough is enough, you know. So now we've got to say, okay, if you make that, don't put the Montreal on
Yes.
my piece. You know, put it on your piece and your piece alone. Enough's enough.
And then these are freshly cracked peppercorns. And what I'm going to do with this, Paul, is I'm going to place it in my oven at 500 degrees for 15 minutes. Then I'm going to drop the temperature to 325, and I'm going to let it cook another 15 minutes per pound. But at the VFW or in the restaurants, we'll do like 20 minutes at 500. And those big ovens, they're like cast iron, they stay really hot. We
Yeah.
turn it off and just let the roast just sit in there.
Oh, really?
And then we
Okay.
go temp them, and when we know that they're temped out, that's all there is to it. And again, I can cook it at 9 in the morning, and 9 o'clock at night, it still cuts like butter. The only time it doesn't cut well is right after it cooks. It actually gets you want it to rest.
Yeah.
And the longer it rests, the better it gets.
So how long do you let it rest?
I would go at least 20 minutes.
Okay.
But the longer it rests, the more of its own fat goes back into place. It makes it easier
Yeah.
to cut. And when you put it in the au jus, melts like butter. Wait, I'm gonna give you this one to try.
So it's kind of interesting too, because I know like the higher the quality of meat,
Correct.
the more marbling there is in it, right?
That's exactly
so really,
right.
the higher the quality of meat, the more fat content there is
Precisely.
as well. So
exactly.
the lesser quality meats would
Would be
probably
lean.
would be more lean and more
Precisely.
healthy. May not be as tasty.
And
It may not be as flavorful, but it would be more lean.
And what we don't want to eat, Paul, is we're not going to eat that part.
Oh,
Like,
yeah, we are.
obviously, most of us do,
Yeah,
but that's
we
not. We're only using
Let's be
it to
honest.
tenderize the
Yeah.
meat.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like in an eye round, if you wanted that on there, it wouldn't be there. Like in Britain, they would wrap it in bacon so they would make it be tender.
Yeah.
You know, because you need the fat for tenderness, but it's not good for our
Yeah.
hearts. It's not good for our body. It isn't healthy, but it is delicious and a good tradition.
Yeah, very good. So like tradition, you know, I've heard the joke that tradition is just peer pressure from dead people. Okay? And you know, and we may think of it like that, but I mean there is a lot of power and importance to tradition. I mean, tradition it strengthens family bonds, right? It builds a stronger connection. I mean, first in our very hurried world, you know, where we live at opposite ends of the country, oftentimes, you know, that tradition brings families together where you have some face-to-face time. You know you can look forward to it, you know it's coming, and it's that constant. So even in our world where it seems like so much changes, that tradition can be a constant. And it also shows you that you're part of something unique. You know, it's like you're part of this family, you're part of this unit, and you've got your unique ways of doing things. So tradition provides, you know, identity, right? It's a source of identity for the family. It strengthens family bonds. It can give comfort and security. You know, because once again, there's few constants in this ever-changing, hurried world. And especially for young children,
Yeah.
you know, tradition and family rituals provides comfort and security. You know, and it also teaches values. I mean, think about this, because a lot of our traditions go around our family beliefs.
They do.
Right? You know, we were talking about Christmas Eve.
Right.
Right? I mean, it's one of those things that a tradition can impart and reinforce family values. You know, it could be like, you know, Christmas Eve. You know, you get together, you have a great meal together, and then you go to worship together.
Right.
Or
Exactly.
maybe a family tradition is, you know, you say prayers at dinner, or you say prayers at bedtime. Or, you know, a family tradition is, you know, your bedtime routine.
Right.
You know, maybe, you know, you read to your kids, or, you know, whatever it is that you do, and you're imparting your values, right? It's important to be together. It's
Right.
important to share with each other. Even a tradition could be family dinners.
I like that.
You
My
know-
dad still does one well, not since COVID, but my dad and my bonus mom, every single Sunday they have family dinners, have
Yeah.
for decades.
I love that.
You know, they just are really dedicated to it.
We did that for years. You know, I've always lived away from my mom and my dad.
Right.
And for a period of 5 years, we actually lived in the same town. And every Sunday we would get together, the entire family.
Nice.
We'd get together and have that family
Feels
dinner.
good,
And
doesn't
it
it?
does.
It
It
does.
does. And I still remember that today. So now you're not doing a tradition thing here. You are doing a side dish for the.
Yes.
Okay,
This
very
is
good.
not a tradition at all. This is something that I make a lot with the family. Basically, whatever's in your refrigerator, vegetables.
A lot.
We do.
A lot,
I
yeah.
make it a lot.
Too often.
So any vegetable in your refrigerator or any potatoes in your pantry, just cut it up, put it in here, put a little bit of olive oil and salt, garlic powder, and
Montreal steak seasoning.
We saw that coming.
this is my favorite go-to.
I love you.
It is in, I would say, 95% of everything I make.
Yeah, it is.
It's fantastic.
I
So
love you.
it
It
is
is
funny
really
that
good.
Debbie loves this too, but I love it. And so you do have to cook the potatoes ahead of time, or if you have Brussels sprouts that do take a little longer, you do have to cook them earlier. But basically, you just put it on a sheet pan and broil it, and it's absolutely gorgeous and tastes great.
It does. It looks good, and it does.
Yeah,
It does.
it's good for you.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I love it. It's gonna go great with the prime rib.
Yeah.
I'm gonna get ready to serve you some.
You know, I was gonna say, you know, tradition also, it passes on cultural and religious values or
Yeah.
heritage.
Yes.
You know, like I was telling you, I used to watch my grandfather make those panchitas, or
Right.
my mom will make chicken paprikash, or,
Right.
you know, because my grandfather was Hungarian. And so that tradition is passed on, that heritage is passed on a little bit, you know, and so it's, once again, it's tradition is powerful. You know, tradition also connects generations. I don't know, do you ever have that where it's like, you know, once again, I sit back and I think, you know, it connects kids with their grandparents, or even their great-grandparents. Anyway.
I always liked Easter Sunday. Remember when we were little kids and we get all dressed up in our coats
Oh, yeah.
and I mean, Easter Sunday was just, you just couldn't wait to go to church.
Absolutely.
And that's so funny, church has become so much a part of my life. Obviously, I have such a great pastor. But that was a great tradition.
Yeah.
I used to, couldn't wait to go get all our dressed up in our little Easter clothes just so we could go to church.
You know, and some of those, like even those daily, you know, micro kind of traditions. I can remember like going to my grandparents' house in Cleveland, Ohio, and we go get Kentucky Fried Chicken, or it was Arthur Treacher's Fish and Chips.
Yeah.
Do you remember that?
Yeah, I love
Okay, I mean,
that.
I think they're all gone. I don't think there's an Arthur Treacher's in the country anymore.
I don't know.
They were
But
so delicious.
I know, but
The
that
malt
was a
vinegar.
tradition. Like, every time I saw one, I think of my grandparents. It was just one of those things that, so it creates memories, right? So tradition also creates lasting memories. Think of some of your history. Think of some of your favorite memories from the past. And I'd venture to say it's directly connected to a tradition. And so, you know, it's important that we create them. Okay, we need to create the traditions. And for you to create a tradition, oh, look at this, look at this, look at
Oh,
this.
that's
This looks
beautiful.
excellent. You know, for you to create a tradition, you know, find a purpose. You know, what's your purpose in doing it, and make it personal. Okay, so like if you want to impart like a religious belief or you know your faith, you find a tradition that that's important that will help do that.
Yes.
And then you know make it personal, make it you know important to your family.
So I think we should make this a tradition.
Yeah, I think we do.
I
So
think
we
so,
should
too.
do this like weekly. Paul, prime rib, Suzanne, veggies. I love
That
y'all's
looks
company.
beautiful.
I love how much
You
fun
see
we
this
have
up there?
together.
This looks excellent. We
Is
have
that
the
beautiful?
the
You have it.
potatoes and the
We have
right
roasted
there.
potatoes. We've got our beautiful roasted vegetables, and done in the au jus. Can you see how it cuts like butter?
Yep.
It's beautiful.
And again, it was really easy. I mean, it's maybe an hour. It was probably an hour and 15 minutes in the oven, an hour prep before the oven. But we could still be doing this at 9 o'clock tonight, and that
Yeah.
roast will hold up beautifully. If you do a turkey, the skin starts
Oh my
to
God.
look all
Starts to get dry,
wrinkly,
yeah.
gets dried out. The prime rib is really, I mean, as you saw how
That's
simple it
beautiful.
was.
Yep.
You're gonna cook that other one so you can have that for breakfast.
Oh, yeah. See, I get to eat. One of the greatest things about this whole
Isn't it
thing that
fun?
we're doing is I get to eat dinner when
Absolutely.
we do this. When we do this, this is
And it's amazing how easy it is. Like I think I was 11 when I first started working in the prime rib house in Lake Winnipesaukee Christmas Island
okay.
Steakhouse.
Okay.
And it was one of the very first restaurants where the chef would be in the dining room, and we were world famous for prime rib. And I was learning how to make prime rib before most kids could even do algebra.
Yeah.
And I've been doing it, and I probably had 1,000 techniques since then, but this one's pretty easy and it works good.
Absolutely.
Very good.
That is
It's-
wonderful.
this is excellent. So traditions are extremely important. And I just want to kind of share with you real quick that traditions can change, right? I mean, traditions have a lifestyle or a life cycle. And some of the traditions that you had when you were younger and some of your favorite memories, they change because life changes, right?
Yeah.
And so sometimes, you know, even though we want to perpetuate a tradition, you can't necessarily do it.
Right.
And so, like, when you go to create traditions with your family, I was just talking to a young family the other day, and Christmas is coming up, and now they have young kids,
Right.
And they've got, you know, they've got 2 sets of grandparents, and they got, you know, and it's like you need to develop your own tradition,
Right.
okay? And so, as a family unit, what are some of your traditions? And you can always kind of incorporate stuff from the past,
Right.
okay? You know, but you got to create something new as well.
Yeah.
And so, like, sometimes when you know, one of the issues that a lot of young couples have is when they first get married, they have this way of doing things that they were taught, that they
Right.
were used to, that was
Right.
tradition and important to them. And then you got to meld the two together. So
Yeah.
part of that is just sitting down and talking it out and saying, okay, this is something we'd like to keep,
Right.
and this is something that maybe, you know, we won't. We'll start something new.
And hopefully the families will work with that. Like I've seen young
Yes.
families
It
where,
can be tough.
yeah, I remember the first year that Navarre and Tyler weren't going to be home for Christmas. I
Yeah.
remember, you know,
That
I
was
knew
hard.
it was that they have to have their own, but things
Uh-huh.
change,
Yeah.
you know.
And it's
So,
hard, isn't it?
Yeah,
it's hard.
it is
It's hard when those traditions change.
It's hard when those
Oh.
kids grow up.
It is. It is.
Yeah.
You know, it's like even this upcoming Christmas, I'm sitting back thinking, both my kids may not be home this Christmas because of work, you know, responsibilities and everything else, and they just may not be here. And
That's
so
tough.
those traditions begin to change.
Yep.
And so create new traditions. All right, and so you know, be conscious about it, talk it out, and create those traditions that are going to build those memories, that are going to strengthen those family bonds. Right, and it could be as simple as what?
Uh-oh.
Eating some of these delicious. Oh,
I
eating
love
some of
it.
these delicious
Those look
Keep
gorgeous.
it
cinnamon
simple. I
rolls.
love it.
That's right. Keep it simple so you can enjoy the family.
Exactly.
And,
No more holiday hags.
No more holiday eggs. It smells delicious. It looks good.
Yep.
And I know full well that neither one of these two are going to eat any of these, so
No.
I will get them all.
He will.
I wish.
Yeah.
If
Anyway,
I could have carbs and look like
Yeah.
them,
Yes.
then that would be a perfect
I
world.
just wear baby shirts. Anyway. All right. Hey, thank you very much for joining us. You have a great day, and God bless.